This podfic is recommended for over the ages of 13 for swearing and violence. It all started with the new students and the murders by demipjowolf. Ships include solangalo, theyna, percibeth, frazel, etc. Chapter 0. Tattoos. Percy has an owl with books surrounding his feet on his right shoulder blade. Annabeth has a wave, a black horse, and 2 blue cookies on her shoulder blade. Jason has an eye with rainbow-colored irises that looks like a kaleidoscope on his left shoulder blade. Piper has a lightning bolt and an eagle on her left shoulder blade. Nico has a sun and a first aid kit on his left pectoral. Will has a skull and a silver ring on his left pectoral. Calypso has a dragon wrapped around her left thigh along with a tool belt next to it. All Leo has is a heart with cracks running through it on his left thigh. Frank has a gold ring with a ruby stone on his right ankle. Hazel has an elephant and a bow and arrow on her right ankle. Charles literally has a heart on his sleeve, his right biceps specifically. Selena has a forge on her right bicep. Charles and Selena are already together and now have heart inside a forge on the right biceps. Raina has a pine tree and a pine cone just above her hip on the left side of her belly button. Thalia has a very detailed and specific combat dagger with a gold blade and a purple leather hilt above her hip, the left of her belly button. Kitty has a bunch of pricking equipment, including tripwires, superglue, and hair dye on her right ribcage. Travis has a collection of flowers, none of which he can be bothered to actually identify, on his ribcage. Who are they? Chapter 1. Thalia's POV. Thalia woke bright and early for her first day of school, not because she wanted to go to school, but because she was going to stuff her face with food like every morning and needed more time to get ready because of it. As she walked down the stairs reading the usual note that her dad was gone to work already, she thought about the year that was to come. Her mind went to her friends first. How had they changed? Had they even changed at all? Had they gotten into fights? Had someone in their group become a couple? Was Selena still going to try to get her interested in the whole soulmate shebang? Thalia didn't hate the idea of having a soulmate. She just couldn't really care for it too much. If she even found her soulmate, cool. If not, oh well, that sucks. Who cares? She even thought about him, her oldest friend who turned into her biggest enemy at school. He was already in college, but unfortunately, their school was both a high school and a college on the same massive campus. Was Annabeth still going to defend him no matter what he did? Thalia felt her mind quickly going into overdrive as she chugged a liter of milk and headed back upstairs for a quick shower to clear her thoughts. As she leapt down the steps back into the kitchen after her shower, she saw her brother Jason was now also awake, making his own breakfast in the kitchen. Not going to make breakfast for your dear sister? Thalia asked with a fake hurt in her voice. Please, I know you've already been down here and just went back up for a shower. There was a carton of milk missing in the fridge. Jason scoffed in a reply, but Thalia knew he didn't mean any harm. Plus, you eat like a rabid wolf. I'm not making breakfast for you. You're one to talk, wolf boy, Thalia said, chuckling as she remembered the day her brother had wandered off in the woods and befriended some wolves. Shut up, pinecone face, Jason shot back, speaking of how do you think Percy and Raina are doing? Thalia sighed softly, sitting down next to her brother, thinking about the conversation they were about to have, the one they had every year when school started. They'd sit back and talk about their 2 oldest best friends, Percy and Raina. They hadn't met in over a decade, but they cherished their memories they'd made at the time, including the idiotic nickname her brother had just called her. I don't know, but I'm sure they're doing great. Those 2 were never people anyone could fuck with, not even their dads/stepdads, Thalia replied, digging into her food. You're right. I wonder what happened to Julian and Gabe. Anyways, Jason wondered, looking off in the distance. So, Thalia began with a smirk, changing topic. When are you gonna ask Piper out? Why would I even want to? Jason managed to get out. Apart from your raging obvious feelings for her, Thalia replied with a laugh. This isn't fair. You don't have anyone I can tease you with, Jason complained. He wasn't wrong. Thalia wasn't really attracted to anyone in their school. Sure, there were many hot and good-looking girls, like literally every girl in their friend group, but none really stood out to Thalia in the way that would make her fall for them. Yeah, well, that sounds like a you problem. We need to get going soon, Thalia said, getting up and rushing up the stairs. No, it's a very much your problem, not mine, she heard her brother call from downstairs and chuckled. Thalia brushed her teeth and looked one last time in the mirror, lifting up her shirt slightly to take a look at her tattoo, a very detailed golden dagger, before forcing all the negative thoughts and worries out, replacing them with happy memories and hopefulness for the next school year to start off good. She rushed back downstairs, literally having to grab Jason and pull him into the car before setting off for school, continuing to talk about the next year and the possibilities of new students arriving. What's up? Thalia asked Jason as he pulled into the school parking lot, noticing he was playing with his lightning bolt necklace, a present from their father, something he did a lot when he was nervous. I don't know, I just have a feeling that something is about to change dramatically here, and I don't know what, he replied. Don't worry too much, Jace. We have our friends, our family to back us up, Thalia assured her brother. What's your first subject? English with Mr. Blowfus, Jason replied. You? I've got history with Kyron, Annabeth and Piper, Travis, and Frank are with me as well, Thalia answered. You know, I heard Mr. Blowfus has a daughter he's kept secret for 2 years now. I wouldn't be surprised. He's a great guy and really kind. I'm sure he's a great father, Jason said as they walked through the front door in search for their friends. Well, if it isn't the Sparky siblings, Thalia heard a familiar voice call. She often regretted telling Leo that her father owned multiple electrical companies. This was very much one of the moments of regret. Thalia turned slightly to glare at the small boy before walking over to the group that had assembled around their lockers in conversation. They all said hi and talked about their summer holidays, with Charles and Selena being the cute, perfect couple they were, having gone on a vacation alone together. Hey, Jace, do we know them? Thalia asked asked her brother, but also the group, gesturing subtly to a girl and a boy that had just walked in. They looked eerily familiar to Thalia, but she couldn't quite place it. The boy had messy black hair with slightly tanned skin. The girl had long, dark, braided hair with olive skin. Thalia couldn't see their exact eye color because they walked quite far away from anyone, sticking close together. Thalia had to admire them. As a pair, they looked incredibly intimidating. Both had body language and a look that said, "We're worse than you could ever possibly be," meaning people pretty much parted around them. What struck Thalia most about the two, though, besides the fact that she recognized them, but didn't know exactly why she did, was the fact that they were both wearing fingerless gloves. That didn't make sense with the rest of their outfits and the fact that the boy had perfect skin on his underarms. Too perfect. Thalia knew what it was and could recognize it from a mile away. She used to do it. It was makeup, most likely covering scars or bruises the boy didn't want anyone to see. Nope, but I am getting a familiar and also weird vibe from them. Anyone know him? Jason replied, turning to the others for help. A resounding no passed through the group, with one exception of Nico, who looked closer at the two before saying no, but Thalia saw a flash of a smile in his face. The bell suddenly rang, and Thalia set off to history with Annabeth at her side, Piper, Travis, and Frank just behind them. They entered the classroom and headed towards the back, like they always did, and Thalia saw that 2 new students had already sat down in the second-to-last row. She had no idea what they were talking about. The boy chuckled for a moment before receiving a punch that was both incredibly loud and looked incredibly painful, but the boy didn't seem to care at all. Thalia managed to catch a glimpse of their eyes as they passed them to sit in the last row, but that only made her more annoyed. She still couldn't place who they were. She saw the girl had incredibly beautiful dark brown eyes, while the boy had eyes that were green as the ocean. So she's hot, Annabeth whispered to Thalia, gesturing to the new girl in front of them. She wasn't wrong. Another thing that had intrigued Thalia about the pair was the fact that the girl was not only incredibly beautiful, but also very hot. Yeah, Thalia replied simply, opening her bag and getting her stuff out. Luckily, Thalia was saved from the conversation by Chiron, as the teacher came rolling into the classroom in a wheelchair. Thalia noticed that it was a new one and couldn't resist. "Got some new wheels, Chiron?" she asked loudly from the back of the class. "Indeed I have. Thank you for noticing, Thalia," Chiron replied with a smile. Laughter passed through the classroom, and Thalia felt a bit of tension from the first day of school being lifted slightly. She knew it was good to have Chiron first things first. He always knew how to ease the tension for pretty much anything. "For those of you who don't know, my name is Mr. Brunner, but please call me Chiron. And I teach history and the archery unit in your sports lessons. As today's the first day, I will mainly be learning your names and talking about what we need and what we'll be doing this year," Chiron announced as laughter passed. "I'll begin with the roll call. If you could please give me some form of indication that you are here when I call your name, that would be great. And be creative, as long as it isn't anything inappropriate." More laughter passed through the room as many people made absurd noises and idiotic things when their names were called. Frank, on the other hand, groaned, realizing that the roll was being taken in alphabetical order of last names, meaning that he would be dead last. "Jackson," Chiron called from the front of the class. Thalia froze. No, it couldn't be. "Yeah, here," both of the new kids in front of her said. What? Why did they both react? If it was who she thought they weren't old enough to get married yet. Were they? They had always been pretty close. Thalia felt her mind overloading and decided just to focus on what Chiron was saying. "Right, my apologies. I didn't notice there were two of you. Theyna, I presume?" Chiron said, gesturing to the girl, who nodded in response. "Which makes you Percy," he added, gesturing to the boy, who nodded as well. Thalia was left dumbfounded. She felt like she'd been hit in the head with a fucking brick. Her mind raced, trying to compute what was happening. There was no way in hell those two were the Theyna and Percy she had known as a small child. Both looked quite different from the Theyna and Percy she had known, and she didn't know why both of them had the last name. They never had romantic feelings for each other, but then again, the last time they met they were 6, so much could have changed. Thalia forced her thoughts out of her head by telling herself that she would talk with Jason about the matter later, turning her attention back to what Chiron was saying. Chapter 2. Paranoid Sister. Jason's POV. Jason took a seat opposite to Piper and next to Leo at their usual table in the cafeteria for their lunch break, digging into his food. "Hey, Jace, according to Leo, those 2 new kids Thalia saw this morning aren't the only new ones here," Piper said with a smile as he sat down. Jason couldn't help but smile in return. He'd really missed that beautiful smile of hers over the summer. Piper had gone on holiday to Bali with her father, and they hadn't seen much of each other since the end of the last school year. "Really? I know of one, that red-haired, all-artist girl, but I think her name was Rachel? I met her in art today," Hazel mentioned, sitting down next to Piper. "Yeah, she's called Rachel. The other one's called Calypso," Leo said, his voice softening for the last word. "Oh no," Jason muttered with a chuckle, knowing what that meant. "Piper, Leo's fallen again." Leo didn't even deny it. His face just turned very red and he tried laughing it off like he did with everything else. "Aw, what'd she look like?" Piper asked with a smirk. "Who are we talking about?" Selena asked, sitting down at the table with Charles. "Leo's new crush," Jason answered, and was met with a squeal from Selena. "That's her," Leo muttered, gesturing to the entrance of the cafeteria subtly. Jason looked over and saw a girl with light skin, light brown hair, and almond eyes. She was pretty, but she wasn't anything too special to Jason. "I mean, she's pretty, but I've seen better," Jason said, his eyes flicking back to Piper, who looked away and blushed. A moment later, Frank, Travis, and Connor joined them at the table, the older Stoll brother grinning suspiciously. "Travis, what did you do?" Charles asked. "Damn it, Beck, how do you always know what I'm thinking?" Travis groaned. "Spit it out," Charles said. "Fine, I may or may not have covered the inside of Katie's lockers with pictures of me," Travis replied with a laugh, "and some pictures of snakes and spiders." Leo laughed, and Jason couldn't help but chuckle slightly as well. Was it childish? Yes. Was it funny? Also, yes. And it wasn't like Katie was deathly afraid of snakes or spiders. She just didn't really like them. Much like Travis. Come on, Trav. If you want to get her noticed, then maybe just talk to her. We all know you love her, Selena said. You sound an awful lot like your mom, Travis groaned, completely ignoring what she'd said. She's not wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if you had a Katie Gardner shrine in your room. Connor chuckled, earning him a slap in the back of the head. What? Annabeth asked, joining the table, closely followed by a very angry-looking Katie. Stole! She yelled, and he laughed. Yes, my dear Katie? He asked innocently. Care to explain why the fuck my locker is filled with pictures of you? Katie shouted at him. Oh, wow, I knew you liked me, Katie Cat, but that's a bit extreme. I'm honored to be enshrined in your locker, Travis replied with a laugh, Jason looking over to Piper and rolled his eyes. She shook her head in response. You know, Trav, forget what I said. I think you have it all sorted out, Selena said. Gods, Jason. Thalia won't shut up about these new kids, Nico groaned as he joined them as well. Where is she, anyways? Piper asked. At the lockers. She was looking for something. I think it was an old picture, but I don't know, Annabeth answered. Yeah, well, she's here now, Jace. We need to talk. Like now, Thalia said, suddenly appearing behind Jason, causing him to jump slightly. Jason quickly got up, following his sister to a somewhat quieter place just outside the cafeteria. What's up? Jason asked, unsure why Thalia was stressing so much about the two new students. Jason, I think they might be Marina and Percy. Thalia replied softly. What? That's impossible. They live in New York. What would they be doing here in L.A.? Jason asked, dumbfounded. That's the thing. I'm not sure. I know they're called Percy and Raina, which could always be a coincidence, but they're both called Jackson as well, Thalia said. Jason racked his brain for a moment, trying to compute the information bomb his sister had dropped in his head. Well, Jackson isn't exactly an uncommon last name. I know you know that Raina's last name isn't Jackson unless they got married, which is impossible, Jason answered. Also, I'm pretty sure I saw loads of makeups on Percy's arm, Thalia added. Okay, I mean, people do change, but I don't know, Percy wasn't really the type for makeup, was he? Neither of them ever were, Jason replied. So, what do you suggest we do? Thalia asked him. Jason once again took his time, trying to find the best option. He had to really rack his brain. Stuff like this was more Annabeth's forte, not his. I think we should leave it be. If they really are the Percy and Raina we know, well, I'm sure they'll approach us at some point. They were there when I got this, Jason decided, pointing at the scar on his lip. Then when he tried heating a stapler. And if they aren't, well, then we're fine anyways. Okay, Thalia said. Also, we should keep an eye on Nico. He's suspiciously talkative, and he smiled when I mentioned the new kids earlier, she added. Okay, sis. Now you're being paranoid. He's probably just happy that Will now spends more time with our group and that he got Will's number. Let's go back to the others and eat, please. I'm starving, Jason replied, slinging his arm around Thalia's shoulder, practically having to drag her back to the cafeteria. So what do you think of the new kids? Annabeth asked everyone as they sat back down. Jason groaned internally. Of course, he'd just gotten Thalia to drop the topic and now everyone else was bringing it up. Do you mean the Jackson kids? Piper asked. Yeah, Annabeth replied. I don't know, they're kind of intimidating, Frank said. Hazel, Leo, Travis, and Connor nodded in agreement. Yeah, they give me serious don't fuck with us or you'll end up in a ditch vibes, Piper agreed. But the girl's kind of hot, she added, to which Thalia nodded in agreement. What I don't get is the last name. Why is it the same? They're obviously not related, Connor said. Maybe they have the same father but different mothers? Or the other way around, Katie suggested. Yeah, but who the fuck is that close to their step-sibling? Annabeth asked quietly. Everyone nodded in agreement. They all knew about Annabeth's home life with their stepmom and stepbrothers. I would say marriage, but there's no way, Selena pitched in. You're sure they don't? They do seem very close, Leo said. I don't think so, Thalia piped up. I doubt they love each other like that. So we know exactly nothing about them apart from their names and what they look like, Jason concluded. And that they can't be trusted, Annabeth added. Look around. Where are they? She explained, seeing everyone's dumbfounded looks. I mean, I guess you're right. They aren't here, but that doesn't mean we can't trust them, does it? Travis added. What would you be doing other than eating during the lunch break? Piper replied, obviously agreeing with Annabeth. Jason looked over to Thalia and saw that she was hiding a pained expression. He knew that she wouldn't be able to let the topic go. He knew she deeply wanted them to be Percy and Raina they'd been friends with, and her friends not trusting them was hurting her a lot. Perhaps this was a weird feeling Jason had felt that morning. The thought that two students might rip their friend group apart seemed impossible to Jason, but after the debacle Luke, he knew anything was possible. Chapter 3. Raina's Little Angel. Percy's POV. Percy walked through the corridors next to Raina, their fellow students parting before them as if they had the plague. Percy didn't mind, and he knew Raina didn't either. They weren't here to make friends. Not yet, at least. They were on their way to their last lesson of the day, English. Percy didn't really like English, but Raina was good at it, so he knew he'd be fine. Plus, Paul Blofus, his stepfather, was their teacher. Doesn't look like anyone wants to be friends with us, Raina said with a chuckle as they walked into a somewhat emptier hallway. You two look like you've murdered someone, a familiar voice said from behind them. Percy turned and saw Nico standing behind them. Hi, Mom. Hi, Percy. Nico rushed forward, hugging Raina so tight Percy was sure she might explode if she wasn't built like a brick wall. Nico, you're gonna kill her, Percy said with a laugh. It's fine. You missed me a lot, didn't you? Raina asked jokingly, kissing Nico on the top of the head, which wasn't exactly hard as she was quite a bit taller than him. You two drag a lot of rumors with you. You know that, Nico mentioned with a laugh. Really, what's the tea? Percy asked with a grin. You're such a child, Jackson, Nico replied, rolling his eyes. There's a massive debate as to whether you're step-siblings or married. And because of the whole last name thing. Oh, and my friend group doesn't trust you because your arms are covered in makeup and you didn't show up for lunch. Well, that's not really our concern, though, is it? Raina muttered. That wasn't entirely true. Percy had noticed something quite interesting during the course of the day. It's kinda is, RJ, Percy said. Firstly, they're Nico's friends, so we should probably get along with them. Secondly, Thalia and Jason are a part of that group. Wait, what? Raina asked loudly. Thalia and Jason as in our Thalia and Jason? The ones that we were friends with until their dad and your dad got into a fight? As much as I'm enjoying this, I promised someone I'd meet them at the nurse's office, Nico said, waving to them and running off. See you in English. He's gone off to see his doctor, quotes, not boyfriend, end quotes. Again, isn't he? Percy asked with a laugh. To answer your question, yes, they are. I don't think they know it's us, though. Otherwise, I'm sure they would have tried to talk to us. Percy, I'm not sure about them. I mean, I think of what happened since we last saw him, what we've done, Raina said softly. Percy knew what she was talking about. Ever since his dad gotten into a fight with Ollie and Jason's dad, they'd been separated from each other and hadn't communicated. It had been more than 10 years now. That wasn't the only thing that Raina meant, though, but Percy knew that as well. He also knew that she might mean her tattoo. It was a pine tree and pine cones. Even though she'd gotten it long after the last time they'd met, Percy and Raina were sure that it symbolized Thalia. Raina always denied it, never wanting to get her hopes up for no reason. But they'd all been there the day Thalia got struck nearly 30 feet above the ground on a pine tree before getting hit in the head by a pine cone. Percy remembered how he and Jason stood there, frozen with fear as they saw Thalia plummet to the ground. Only Raina had stayed composed and managed to think quickly, catching Thalia and softening her fall. It was the day they'd given Thalia her nickname, Pinecone Face, and the day Thalia had developed her deep fear of heights. He was so caught up in his thoughts he accidentally walked into a girl with curly blonde hair and gray eyes as he rounded the corner with Raina. Shit, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going, he said, helping the girl pick up some of her books. Raina scoffed. please, you're just too dumb to walk and think at the same time." "Oh, don't worry, it's fine. I wasn't looking where I was going either," the girl said. Percy met her eyes and saw her face was slightly red, but he couldn't quite tell why. Even after the girl turned around and left, Percy could still see those gray eyes in front of her. The shade of gray seemed eerily familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. He looked to the side and saw Reyna looking at him with raised eyebrows. "What?" Percy asked her. "Nothing. It's just that your face is pretty red," she replied with a chuckle as they started walking towards the classroom again. "Fuck off," Percy growled, punching her in the shoulder. Reyna faked being in pain but laughed along with him. One of the advantages of their tough upbringings was no matter how hard they jokingly hit each other, it never really hurt them badly, even if the punches were strong enough to break another person's arm. "Come on, Perce. One last lesson and we're off to the shack," Reyna said, wrapping her arm around Percy's shoulder. "Yeah, and it's with Paul," Percy added. "Gods, it's gonna be weird calling him Mr. Blofus instead of Paul." "Oh crap, you're right. That's definitely gonna take some getting used to," Reyna laughed. They entered the classroom and headed directly to the back of the classroom, noticing that Nico's entire friend group was in the room. Percy tried his best to ignore them, but couldn't help meet the gray eyes of the blonde girl he met in the corridors earlier. Something about them compelled him, but he wasn't sure what. "Gods, Percy, she's gonna think you're a creep if you keep staring at her like that," Reyna said with a laugh as they sat down, punching him in the shoulder. "RJ, they already think we're creeps. They think we're married at 17. Plus, you of all people should know that I don't give a fuck about what other people think about me other than you, Mom, Paul, and Estelle," Percy replied, punching her back. "Percy, Reyna, I thought I told you two to not beat each other up in front of me." Percy hears Paul's voice. "Sorry, Mr. Blofus," the two called back with a chuckle. Paul smiled at them in return. Percy knew that Paul didn't really mind when they punched each other because ever since he'd seen Percy and Reyna fight off gangsters in front of their house, he knew they were tougher than rocks. The only reason he ever told them not to fight was because he knew that if Sally ever got a word of it, she'd kill him. And then the kids for fighting. "Good afternoon, class. I know it's your first day of school and it's your last lesson of the day, so I'll give you a simple and relaxing task," Paul announced. "It's a cliche task, so please don't complain about it. But I want you to write a simple essay about your summer holidays. We'll get into our more specific topics next lesson." Percy couldn't help but chuckle slightly, slung an arm around his adoptive sister, pulling her towards him slightly and messing up her hair a bit, receiving a jab in the ribs and a laugh from Reyna, before turning his attention to his paper, beginning to write about whatever he could think of and desperately failing due to his dyslexia. Luckily, Reyna's dyslexia wasn't as bad as his, so she did help him, so the lesson passed quickly enough. When the school bell rang, Percy quickly packed his stuff, giving Reyna a light shove and rushing out of the classroom. "Fish boy, get back here!" Percy heard Reyna shout from behind him, laughing as he ran through the hallways towards the parking lot. He almost made it to the parking lot, but as he was only a few feet away from his car, he got tackled from behind by Reyna, landing in the grassy ground hard. "Gods, if we weren't at school parking lot, I'd beat the fuck out of you," Percy said, shoving Reyna off him and standing back up, fishing the car keys out of his pocket. "You mean you'd try to?" Reyna scoffed. "I'm driving." "Fuck no, my car," Percy shot back. "You know, if you ever need the car when I don't, you can have it. But the deal is, when we drive, I'm the driver." "I guess I can't back out of a deal," Reyna sighed, getting into the passenger side of Percy's sea green Nissan 270Z Fair Lady. As Percy sat down and started the engine, he noticed Nico's huge friend group was staring at them like they were some sort of zoo, which, Percy had to admit, the two acted like that sometimes. "What's for dinner?" Reyna asked as they set off. "No clue. We're gonna have to ask Mom about that," Percy said. "Ah, shit. She just texted us saying Paul's working late. Dinner's gonna be late as well then," Reyna groaned. "So check on Estelle, grab snacks, go to the shack, and continue to look for the bodies?" Reyna suggested. "Check on Estelle, grab snacks, go to the shack, and continue to look for the bodies," Percy said, his expression turning grim as he remembered the main reason they'd moved to LA. That's it for Chapter 3. I'll try to update as soon as I can. Have a good day.